This is 2OF Entertainment.
Hey, and we're back. Who knew?
We're back, and my pencil was tapping to the music again. And there you go.
There you go. Thank God we had David to do that.
Well, David did a good job on that. He pulled the graphics together. Appreciate that very much for all that he does for us. And
he does absolutely. He does nothing. Yeah, he does nothing. He lays around now. He gets fanned by naked Tahitian boys. He's very happy. He could care less. Shows up once a week, does a little bit, and we don't see him for like a month.
So, he might be the smarter of all of us. You know,
I was just going to say he's not an idiot. He knows what's going on. So we actually did which will air yesterday. I have to figure out when. He calls it Hollywood Days, the Hollywood Day. No snobs and knobs. And he said, yes, he said they ran out of baby oil to rub him down. So that's why he came back to work. I'm like, oh, so as soon as he gets another 50-gallon drum, he's going back to work.
Well, I don't know about the baby oil, but we're going to get down to some different thing today, a little bit of a different program format. I mean, we are interviewing an artist in a way, but Dwight Baird, he's been with us before in a previous interview just about his artwork, but we brought in this other guy named Paul Constable, and he's gonna
never heard of him.
The two of us we're definitely gonna have a conversation about something a little bit I think most artists go through. It's just this: do you change partway through your career? How do you change? Does it affect your following and your audience if you change a style or a technique in the way you produce your artwork? So between Dwight and myself, we've had quite a few years of, I guess we'll call it experiences. So we have to say, maybe it's shareable. I think it comes down to maybe we have some knowledge that we can share with you. I mean, we're still learning ourselves as to should we be doing this, should we not be doing that, and what the hell? I think we're even at an age to say we really don't care. We will do what we want to do, and if it bites, it bites. If it goes ballistic and everything,
Well, the nice thing, you and Dwight were painting before there were paintbrushes. So and I've seen the caves, and they're beautiful. Yeah, so I think for the younger artists, this is going to be an educational show for them, and even for some of the artists that are trying to establish themselves that are thinking about this, because you guys can give them a perspective, if you will, of 80, 100 years of experience. And I think that's what a lot of people don't tell them. So I think this is going to be a good show in that respect.
There's lots of images, and we're going to break it into 2 segments, so you'll be able to see some of Dwight's work, and he's going to talk about where he was and where he's going, and I'll try and do the same with what we've got going on. And together, I got a whack of slides to go through, so we'll be rambling along. We'll just
all right. Whenever you're ready, should we bring Dwight in, since we're just talking about him? We'll just leave him in the green room, and we'll talk about him, and that's it. Yeah, Dwight, good to see you.
Hey. Nice to see you again, Steve.
Good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah. Turn up your volume a little bit.
How are you doing?
Good. Doing good. Can you turn your volume?
Turn your volume and stick closer to the computer so the fans will be able to hear you, if you would. There you go.
There you go.
A little better. I'm going to leave so you two can do the 17-hour show. I will be back at the end with different questions, because it's a different show. And we'll go from there. So guys, have a wonderful interviewing yourself and teaching the people, and we'll see you a little later. Cheers.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Well, I guess we're probably doing more of a discussion today. I think more so than a so-called interview. And I think I just felt that after this is halfway through our 3rd season, and you and I've had a conversation before about your work, and I've been on about my work as a filler sometimes just in the show. But I think it's we have, I think, we underestimate ourselves. I think we do have some information that we can share with other artists. Our journeys that we've been through are sometimes a bit longer than some other people's, and we've got our highs and lows, and so I thought, well, yeah, we got a portfolio of some of your work and a portfolio of my work, and I think I think it's important that, we talk about it. I mean, just even for ourselves, because we're sitting there trying to figure out, where are we ourselves in this? We're in more of the mature end of our careers, and say, this is really the time when we should really be thinking about those directions that we're going. I mean, the string is only just so long, you got to figure out what kind of work you want to do.
We're just playing out the string.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'm just going to have Steve just start the first video. There we go. So, and these weren't necessarily beginning stages for any one of us, but they're just different. You did very different work than I do. But I think we share a commonality of trying to find the quality of an idea and a thought and I'm a remember, whether it's a remembrance or what it is that made you stop and want to paint a series or a body of work. And I think I think this kind of encapsulates, maybe I'm hoping, or what we want to maybe talk about today a little bit about. Have you been through the stage of, can you see the change that you've gone through in your work from early days to now?
Well, yeah, there's been a change. There's been a change. Obviously, there's a change. I started as a watercolorist. First of all, I lived in the country. I was kind of a rural painter, and then I traveled, and then I went through. Most of my work now is urban, and I went from watercolors to acrylics about midway through. But the theme, not the theme, but the underlying structure of my work and the underlying sort of purpose of my work was always kind of the same. I was always trying to tell a story through each painting, told a little story, up until the point to where I'm at now, which probably we'll discuss later, where I've broken away from that whole idea of telling a story with each painting, which perhaps the whole series of works I'm doing now, I'm trying to tell a story, was before individual painting for me was a small story,
Right.
and that has remained constant all the way up until this year, I would say,
Mhm.
and
Yeah. I saw in a lot of your work, like this is a watercolor, actually, this beautiful piece here. We get caught up in doing series of work because we get an idea and we just keep digging deeper and deeper in that series, trying to understand those moments and special, like circuses and exhibitions and fairs and things where your work is quite. There's always people in them, right? There's that people energy that have been, whether they're in a Cuba series or whether they were some of your really early baseball series or different things. There were people who were involved in that imagery, which I think does you think that draws people in? They see a visual of a person that becomes them almost at times when they're a viewer looking at that. Do you feel like you're next to this guy in the scrambler sometimes? Like, do you feel like that people get that kind of sense for why people are in an image?
people in paintings are tricky. Well, it doesn't. I've always either put people or car. They're always, I think I told you one, they're all characters, whether it's a car or whether it's a person or whether it's a chicken or whether it doesn't matter what it is. They're all characters in this story that I'm trying to sell, or I'm trying to tell,
Yeah.
It's the nicest compliments I've ever had when I do the shows and I do my works. The two nicest compliments I've ever, well, the two most interesting anyway. One was, people come in, and it's happened a few times, and they say, your paintings tell stories, and that's a wonderful compliment. The other compliment that I thought was really interesting over the years was this individual who became a pretty good collector of mine he told me there's a lot of math in your paintings, and that's probably the most interesting comment I've ever heard about my work, and that's I stuck because I never thought of it before, but as I started to look back on it, I realized he was right. I mean, there is a lot of math in my paintings. It's all angles. It's all, and I think it's the people that break that up and give it like that that human element, and that's what tells. It's a combination of those two things that tell the story. You know, putting people in paintings is a tricky thing. If you want to, I mean, galleries don't like it. You know, they don't want to see. It's a really the majority of like art galleries and things, except for contemporary galleries now, I think. But a lot of the times in traditional art, if you put people in your paintings, if you did a winter scene and put people in them, you know, or if you did winter scene and put cars in them, even worse, you know. And it's you know, but for me, it's always been really quite important to have some kind of interaction with life in there, as opposed to just a street scene where you know there's trees and houses and whatever, you know.
I think some of it is it makes sense to date an image. Like does it feel like the 50s? Does it feel like those things? Some artists want to capture that, but the gallery kind of likes that universality that they can just sell the paintings and there is no date on it when it was done. Is it the paint still wet? It's like is the shiny, is it still shiny? Yeah.
A lot of people that buy art, they like to buy something that I call sort of easy paintings. You know, paintings that don't distract, paintings that sort of kind of they put them in a setting, and when people walk in to their place, they walk by and they sort of notice it, and they kind of say, "That's a nice painting," you know.
It's kind of the accessory to the new couch, you know. It's
But
kind
they
of
don't want like a lot of like a lot of my work. When you walk, it's if you walk by it, you know, the painting kind of yells at you, "Hey, I'm here," you know, "I'm here. I'm not just a piece of decoration. I have something to say. This, you know, I have something to say here, you know, kind of stop and look." And a lot of people
I
don't necessarily want that in their decor, you know. I mean, but you know, I've been very, very fortunate because I have, you know, managed to find over the years a clientele that's exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for artwork that makes some kind of statement, you know, and that you have to. Sometimes I think you have to sort of go out and find those people, you know.
yeah. So it's kind of
You know.
up to the individual a lot of times as to whether they want to physically go and look for a change. Well, why would an artist want to change their work, or does it just happen automatically? Is it just through to I'm tired of doing that scene, I need to move on to the next section of my life, or they get tired of one medium or can't afford to buy this paint so they move to a different paint? Like, I guess there's a number of different reasons why an artist might change a direction, I guess, in their work or education.
A lot of artists don't change, you know, and that's fine too. I mean, I did art festivals and art shows for many years where I know many, many very, very talented artists who over the years do wonderful paintings, but they're all, you know, they're all kind of the same
Yeah.
landscape or they're the same, you know. I mean, you get into a comfort zone like anything else as an artist. If you start, you know, doing shows or putting your work out there and people start to buy it, especially the galleries. I mean, that's what they want again, right?
Yeah.
So you you can ride that horse a long time, you know, your whole career if you want. I
Yeah.
mean, I've always, I don't know why I kind of jumped and jumped and jumped and jumped, you know, and changed. But there comes to a point where I just feel it's maybe time to do something different. I mean, the Cuban series was by far the longest series of paintings I did. I did paintings in this series on and off for probably the better part of 20 years. I mean, uh, I've never spent that much time. I mean, I did other works in between at times, but this was my main thing. And when I did shows, this was what I was the Cuban guy, you know. I mean, before that I was the baseball guy, and you know, and then after I kind of moved on from that, sometimes events happen that make you move on, and you always think it's going to be really not a good thing, and in the end, it turns out to be a very good thing. And
Well,
but
it's
now
nice yeah, it's nice to be able to make a living, but also do what you want to do. And given the freedom to create work that you want to create, that people want to have, like, and they're willing to wait for it. They're willing to go to those shows and finally say, I want to buy one now. And what happens when they go to that show and realize, gee, I changed. I don't do that anymore.
yeah,
I'm now doing this stuff. And they're always behind you. I think a lot of times your following are 10 years behind you. The artist is always ahead of their audience in some way. If they're fortunate enough to have a body of work in reserve that they can sell, they can keep it. But if you've been known to paint mountains and you've switched and you now paint buildings and landscapes, they go, oh, where's the mountains? Like, it's like, I say, I moved on. I had to. You get tired of painting the same mountain how many different ways just for an audience. But this is like, this piece is a Cuban piece, correct? Is this one, other than
this
is
is
it from Havana or someplace, this piece?
it's a bit of a, everything in my work, it tells a story, and the title obviously is often part of the story. It's actually, the titles of my paintings are very, very important. And even this one it's quite political in a way. It's sort of a take on the American flag, Old Glory or whatever. And it's the Cuban flag, and it's sort of a commentary, I guess, on 60 years of socialism. It's I mean, socialism works. Limited socialism works well. Complete socialism doesn't necessarily work. And what's
Yeah.
happened in Cuba? I've over the 20 years that I've gone there, I've seen. I would like to say I've seen the country change. Unfortunately, I would have to say I have not seen it change. Although if it has changed, it certainly hasn't changed for the better. It just seems to get tougher and tougher and tougher. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it started off with a great ideal and everything, and about 10 years down the road, it just turned. And
So what kind of artists did you, I guess, admire when you were early years? Like, were you a follower of the classical artist? Like, I look at the setting of this thing with the older woman and the younger lady, and they're cleaning and they're doing some stuff in a back alley. It feels, is this something that Rembrandt would have thought of as a cool image, in the day? So, what, where did your, I guess I'll call them mentors, come from? Like your ideas and who you admired. Is there a following that you had?
the two artists that have definitely influenced my work over all the years, and they're two quite different artists actually in a way, but the two biggest influences of my art are a Canadian artist, Alice Colville, who I think is, you know,
Yeah.
truly Canada's greatest artist, and an American, Andrew Wyeth. They were
Yeah.
the two big influences on my life. Andrew Wyeth for the rural, even though this is Cuba now, it could be a rural Pennsylvania scene, or whatever. And Alice Colville for the compositions that he, and the subject matter and the compositions and the way he, oddly enough, the mathematics, there's that word again,
Yeah.
the brilliant composition of his work, and the way he was really able to freeze a moment. I've seen like the painting that affected me the most when I was younger, and like I think I saw it in art school. It's an Alice Colville painting of a cow in a field in a full moon,
Yeah.
and I never forgot that painting. And that's in the end, when I did a whole series of works many years later on night scenes. It all came from that painting. I
Wow.
remember that painting, and over the years, I did a lot of night scenes, and until one point, I did a whole series on them. But that was a huge moment for that painting. I'll never forget it.
Yeah. No, Alex Cole he was very much a draftsman, very meticulous in how everything was positioned on the page, and he seemed to do the research. He really did. And he really, to a certain point, sometimes they felt a little austere and a little static, but
a little obsessive, I found. I went to the exhibition here in Montreal, and they had all the studies and the circles and the lines and this, and I went, Jesus, that's.
Yeah, it's very much his nature that I guess of controlling that image and how you want to. But even this, this is part of one of your classics from the Cuba series, the car. But when you look at it technically, okay, you just look at it quickly, cosmetic, beautiful car, you get that really nice color of the building. I guess it's the angle of the street. It's not straight. Like there is some movement to that horizon line of the road, and the people are there, but they're not. They're part of that conversation with that vehicle. And I love the Cuba series. And I mean, every car picture, whether there's 3 or 4 of them on a street or in a portrait like this one, they do give you a feeling of Cuba that maybe I want to visit and travel to Cuba and see. I want to see what Dwight sees. I want to go there and see this image. And I guess you're right with Wyatt. It's the same thing. Go to Chatsford and Pennsylvania and go and see, I want to be able to walk those fields and maybe feel that, oh, this is where he stood, a little bit of that. It's kind of maybe you get a piece of that feeling that the artist has found. And I think you have a line that you always say is something about looking and seeing the things that other people don't see. And I think, is that kind of the role of an artist to try and do those kind of things, is to be eyes in a different way to look at something?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many artists actually do that or don't. I mean, for me, it's always like, even in the Cuban series, people love the cars. They love, but you have to be really careful. And a lot of art you see from Cuba with the cars and that, I call it like, become jingoism. It's just like, even here in everything I've done in Cuba, even though I've done a lot of pieces with cars, again, there are characters in this larger story that I'm trying to tell. It's not about, it's very rare in my painting, it's just about a car. It's about a whole interaction of a car with the environment, with its environment, be it buildings or people or building a story. I mean, a piece like this came from many, many different references. I had a gentleman at the bus, sort of like a bus shelter, and then everything else it's all built around it to tell that. And it's all about composition. It's all about, my work is all about driving the viewer's eye exactly where I want it to go. I want it to go right in to that umbrella in the back, and everything is sort of designed so that their eye follows. You have the post, and then you have the characters around the post, and everything else is sort of happening around it, and it's all part of a panorama, a small panorama of a life scene in the street.
Yeah.
And I love to do, like, I paint a lot of atmosphere. I love to paint rain. I paint night, I paint rain, and I paint snow.
Yeah.
But rain is the Cuban rain, or any other one. It's a softness in the paintings, which is very much like the same palette as the Montreal winter scenes.
Oh, yeah. Jumping ahead. Yeah. We have a few images of the Montreal coming up, and we have people to hang on and wait for some of those, because you see the palette has changed quite a bit.
Here's twilight, right? This is, again, it's a time of day. You see those people on the right. It's the nicest time of the day when the sun hits down by the very famous wall of Malecon, and the cars drive along, and there's whole life going on down around there.
Yeah.
I love this piece because it's very contemporary in the front, with the lines and the lawn, the squares, and it's kind of a real combination of style.
But this has got a setup for some of your stuff you're doing today. I mean, you look at the geometrical blocking of the buildings in the background and the color and the light that you've already got in this piece of work. And people will see near the end where you're going today, and you know how this is maybe transitioned to today's kind of work. So you've already got a lot of this idea in your head. You haven't filtered it out yet, but as you are doing right now, but in your new work. But I just see these blocks of buildings and color in the background that's holding that whole image together.
You know, there's a fair amount of abstraction in a lot of the big pieces I do. I mean, I'm not in that way abstract painter in that way, but there is, you know, that's another thing that people. There's a combination of sort of an abstraction with a very high focal point. It's really something that has become part of a style that I worked on, especially with the large Cuban pieces.
Yeah,
a lot of
this one's really part of that night and that atmosphere feeling that you're talking about here. You know, the whole image being pulled together. You know, the darkness that's there, but there's still this beautiful light that's in behind, and it's silhouetted some of the action that's happening. The musicians, I almost feel I can hear the music. You know, it's just you can just you feel it. And it's really difficult to put a moon in the middle in a painting. It's like, wow, you got a circle in the middle of this geometric stuff that's happening around this atmosphere, and the moon is there. It's
for that.
It's a challenging thing to put into a painting, and you know what? It's almost a risk thing. And I'm going, would I put a moon in there? You know, because
for composition, it's a great compositional tool.
Yeah, it is.
Bring all the focus into the middle, you know, and I've used it, and again, it goes back to that painting of Alice Colville. Although his moon wasn't in the middle, you know, it all goes back to that. These paintings that I did, most of the night scenes that I've done, well, you have to have a light. First of all, you have to have a light source, you know, otherwise, you know, so you need some kind of light. So the moon is a light source. Obviously, the street lights are a light source, you know, but the moon in these pieces gives it it's dramatic. I mean, it makes it very, very dramatic. And it's that, again, it's composition. You're going there, you know, and that's where you're supposed to, you know.
If you move the moon to the right or to the left, it definitely would take your eye over there. Like you're right. Yeah. It's one of those things that your eye will follow that. But
I mean, it centers. Again, it's composition. It centers the painting. You know,
it does. No, it does very much so. Even down to the point where to see the edge of the wall lines up somewhat with the moon. Like your eye is really positioned. Those vehicles are going behind the wall on the road, and yet the musicians really bring you forward. You know, sitting on the wall. Anyway, I hear music in my head when I'm looking at this, and it leaves me a feel. I've never been to Cuba, but I get a sense of what I would expect to see if I went to Cuba, in some way or another.
It's not exactly like this, you know, but you know, I put it together in a way that nobody's ever going to see those scenes, those exact scenes, because they're all made up from many, many different elements. But you could see that scene, you know.
So this is part of your Montreal series and not Cuba anymore. And
this is why I used to go to Cuba. That's why I used to
get away from this. Yeah.
Although I love painting Montreal winter scenes, so you know.
Yeah. You know, they're complicated paintings in themselves, and just the textures are very different than Cuba textures. You know, there's depicting, depicting snow is not the easiest for a lot of people. And you're a fairly realistic painter. I mean, and I would say not a hyper realistic painter, but you're a realistic painter with abstraction in it. So, but I love the pieces where the little piece of signage, and there's a little, positioning, and you said you're right. There is mathematics even in the Montreal series. There's just in the work, the horizontals of the sidewalk and the street and the vertical structures, and even that little sting of red with the gray they're really important things to not only, I guess, it sparks a feeling in you. So they're not cold paintings. They don't feel cold to me. They have there's a warmth, and the grays are beautiful set of grays. I mean, I love the composition and stuff. But again, so you've changed. So here you go. You've been painting Cuba, warm scenes. Now you say, I'm going to have a show. And it's a Montreal series. And then people go there and say, well, it would have been nice to see a couple of your Cuba paintings. But you say, oh, no, well, I'm doing Montreal now. And
Well, I
so
used to do
do
the
you switch
opposite.
back and forth? Did you, for years, did you?
I used to do the opposite when I first started doing these Montreal scenes, because I did them in sort of simultaneously at one point, because I have a market, a limited market for these in Montreal. I work with a small gallery up in Westbound who've been carrying my work for years, and this work is, it's popular, people, and it's different. And yeah, it's Montreal scenes, but it's not the typical Montreal landmarks, and these are very, these are little off the beaten path a little bit, and I would go when I did the art shows and things. I would do like pretty much all the Cuban work, but I would hang three of the Montreal scenes together, as a kind of a set. And I had customers that I did okay with them, because I've been very fortunate to have a clientele that's followed me through those years, through all those changes, and they have different pieces from different times. And
Yeah.
but towards the end, I didn't really have that many Montreal scenes, and at the end, I was just back to showing the Cuban work and just keeping the Montreal scenes mainly for here in Montreal.
So do you do commissions for people when they ask for them, or are you?
No, I've been very fortunate. I've never really done any. I never. I've never given any like courses or workshops. I'm not a very good teacher, I don't think, and I've never been this. Well, I can't say I never. I did two commissions for two Cuban commissions for specific people who asked. I fought it all the way through. I don't think either of them are very good paintings, and I told them flat out, you'd be better buying one that I have. And they said, no, we really would like this. But they were quite happy. But for me, I never
Yeah.
thought they were very good.
I think as long as you've got an idea in the back of your head that you have to make somebody happy with the piece of work that they want you to do, it's not really a lot of times it's them holding your brush and
It
you're
changes
painting.
the whole way of approaching the work. You're not doing work that you really want to do.
Yeah, like this one, the runner. I mean, I think this is one of your beautiful pieces. I loved it. I love the previous one as well with the two people in the park walking. But this piece has got a lot. I love the runner. It leaves you with a lot of. It's a little lonely, but it has a nice feeling in it. And again, the sun in this case, it's still part of that.
Where that moon is.
Yeah. But I
Perfect.
just there's good depth in it. Again, the strength of the horizontals and verticals and the mathematics in there, but then there's the human element that really fits nicely with the piece of work. I mean, it's otherwise it would feel I don't know, like something was missing if the runner wasn't there, and I don't know what else you would put there that would be not distracting, but be a part of. It's like this. Anyway, we've talked about this image before, but yeah.
When I do these big pieces, I always do a smaller piece first, and I did a smaller piece for this one, and it wasn't the runner; it was a woman walking a dog on the smaller piece. And when I did it as a big, I didn't think that would. First of all, it wasn't the story I was trying to tell with the bigger piece. The bigger piece was all about like the loneliness, the solitude,
Yeah.
like a meditation kind of thing. And it's really like, I mean, anybody would look at this. This is when I spoke about Alice Scoville, this is a pretty serious Alice Scoville moment here, you know.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, you can see that for sure. You know. Then we move into these ones. Some of these become a lot more abstract and graphic, and you were talking about that change a little bit from one type of work to this one. And
the switch that we just made, you know.
You're hitching a ride with a truck driver on this one, I think. And
this painting was in my head for so many years, you know. I mean, in the early 90s, when I started the baseball series, the first thing I decided I wanted to do was to go to spring training in Florida. I had no money, you know. I mean, I was really not a starving artist, but I wasn't certainly. And so I had a good friend out in my hometown who had a trucking company, and I knew he went to Florida. His name is on the truck, and so I phoned him and asked him if I could go to Florida with him to West Palm Beach because he was going down to Miami. He said, "Yeah, come on," and he dropped me off on I-95 beside a Motel 6. This is long before cell phones or anything, you know. And he said he'd come and get me in 2 weeks, you know. And so I went in and I booked a room for 2 weeks. But during that time, all the way down and all the way back, because I came back with him, I took photos, many, many photos of all these trucks and truck stops, and because I was going to try and do some kind of series on it, which I never did. But I did when I did the night scenes, the night series. I did have some smaller pieces with this theme. You know, and I always wanted to do a bigger one, but I never could really work it out in my head. And then I think it was during the pandemic. I was doing a lot of painting and not doing shows, and I had quite a bit of Cuban work, you know. And I sort of started to I pulled all this stuff out again, and I sort of started to look at it, and I said, you know, I think one morning I got up and I just did this little tiny thing with markers, just laid it out, and I think I can put that together now, you know, and well,
it takes a while sometimes for the ideas to, you know, ferment a little bit in one's head. But this is really a very flat pattern in this one. Like there's no depth really in it. It's a black background, black on black. The truck's quite dark. Everything's quite dark. Yet you've got these, you know, the graphics of the signs and
yeah, I love putting text and I love graphics and paintings, you know.
But it turns out
like we would drive along the 95, you know, at night, and you just see these. I used to say oases, you know, of lights and neon, and and it just fascinated me, you know. And
it creates a focus for your work because when like you said, you're driving, everything else is dark, and then this, like you said, this little island is lit up, truck stop, and it just gets your attention. Yeah.
And if you take that red dot out of there that was in there, the highway star, you could put a moon in there, and that's exactly the same thing. And it's there again. You know, it's the same composition. It's the same idea. You know, and anybody who's a Deep Purple fan in the 80s or 70s would definitely recognize the title. You know, it was on the first Deep Purple.
Perfect. Yeah. So this is where you are today. You're working on a series, I guess, and it is definitely abstract. And I noticed the one thing in here: there's no people. Like
no people in these paintings, and there won't be any people in these paintings. This is a whole different. Like I said at the beginning, with this series, I'm hoping to do 10 large pieces.
Okay. What size is large?
Not the paintings that tell the story. I think it's the whole body of work that I'm trying to tell the story with. You know.
Okay. So where is it destined to be shown?
I have no idea. It's going to take another 2 years.
Hopefully we can find somebody that says, "Boy, I want to have that show of your work," and hopefully one of your.
Well, I'm working on the third one now.
Yeah. So how long is this?
I was getting quite bored painting after I stopped after I kind of pulled out of the US, which was a timely event, and I left, and I was working. I was kind of at a loss there. I kind of reached a crossroads, and I didn't make any sense to keep doing the Cuban work because I had really the market wasn't there for it. Couldn't see myself just settling in and painting like Montreal scenes for the rest of my career, and it was getting really redundant. And I've had this idea in my head for many, many years, and I wasn't having that much fun painting it, And then I started doing this, and it was hard. I mean, the first piece, they're all hard, but the first one was obviously. But I started really enjoying painting again.
Yeah.
I'm as much as these are really quite different, I'm really quite enjoying doing them.
Yeah. Well, I see you've brought the circle back into here, but it's been just ovaled a little bit, but it's still there, right? The shadow on the container there on the back, and
Yeah, it's it's the composition. These paintings are all about composition and the way the light hits and its lines and its intersecting lines and its planes of color against its.
is this your version of kind of field painting in a way, like the abstraction of shapes? And it still feels Andrew Wyethie a little bit still, though. I still get that feeling, especially down where the chains are in the bottom. He, just if you were to close crop something, in a square, you say, God, that still feels Wyethie to me. So yeah,
You never got
that's not a bad thing. I mean, it just feels there's some continuity in a body of work from a previous body of work. And I think you need that. Do you not? Like, for an audience that follows you, to say that it's still kind of important to say, oh, this feels familiar. The artist feels familiar to this. He knows what he's doing. I've seen not necessarily that scene before, but it's different. Otherwise, I guess if I go to a gallery, and say I go to a gallery regularly and see certain artists that show annually there, I'd like to be surprised once in a while that, oh, that's him, but wow, he's moving. Like, you can see where things are going rather than just painting the same thing over and over again. But
Yeah, I think I've confused a couple of people on this, and I think this series of works is going to be it's a watershed moment. I mean, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it. I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. But it doesn't really matter to me. Again, as you get to a point where, if you're very, very fortunate as a painter or as any kind of artist, musician, painter, writer, where you can you have the privilege basically of being able to do what you want to do without worrying about whether somebody is going to buy it and whether and you can just, I guess you've reached some kind of purity there that you can just, and it's a really quite a privilege to be able to get to that point.
Well,
It's a breathing.
No, I think it's been I guess, a privilege to share this with other people as well. I think it's kind of, you've got a lot of information to share with people, even just if they don't even listen to you, just look at your visuals. I think, but it's nice to see a body. Like, I tried to put this together earlier stage. I didn't put any baseball series in there, but some of the early things that you can work through a system. I guess it's my turn a little bit. I just sort of some early stages of what I have done, and very different than what you're doing. I worked at a kitchen table that had to be cleaned up at 5 o'clock for supper. So a lot of my pieces were smaller. This was actually a plein air piece on a trip through from Calgary to Vancouver. I was traveling with a friend. So he just basically painting from the motel room window or outside on the balcony. I think it was like April or something we did this one. Yeah, April 20th. This is 91. So this was kind of the style that I initially, just watercolors. That's what I could have. That's what I could afford. That's what and it's kind of maybe 11 quarter sheet watercolor paper in size. It's just something I could travel with. I think I'd even been on a water block. I still have the painting. I guess I just love the textures and the looseness of it. And I was working with literally one of those little watercolor kits. There wasn't a full, great big palette of color. You kind of just work and feel through things. So, and I guess what I'm going to go through is just saying this is what my journey was sort of like, and where maybe I am today, and I am all over the page. I mean, when you
So this is when you what, early 30s, that first piece?
sorry,
Is
this
that like
one?
early 30s?
Early 1990s.
So you would have been around, I don't know, not, but
My age? Oh,
yeah.
my,
No, I'm just trying to pinpoint what sort of
I'd be
like.
in my early 40s, I guess, maybe 40-ish, somewhere about there. Late 30s, but this is sort of the style that I painted from the time I came out of college, in my early 20s. This next piece, again, I painted more of I would say a realistic manner. Again, looking for the moment that I was looking for. I was very fortunate that in this one that this writer was a Churchill relative, and they were part of a chuck wagon circuit that they rode in a small town, and I was very fortunate to be able to go back into the gypsy camp at the back after the races were over, and mix with the riders and the cowboys. And this was one with Roy, and he's just walking his horses after the races, just giving them a bit of a cool down. And there's just a moment that I really wanted to feel. I'm not a horse guy. Most of my horses look like German shepherds, but this one, I just it felt like I needed to do this one. I still own this painting, and I probably won't sell it or give it away, but it's just one of those things.
It's got a great. You just feel the emotion. It's great composition. You really like zone in there. But I mean, I just think it's got a great. It gives off a certain emotion, a real quietness, a real sort of pensiveness. It's really quite striking. You really feel it when you see the piece.
Yeah. And I don't know. I guess so. And I guess does my work like yours have a centering point? I don't know if it does. Maybe it's just belt buckle. I don't know. It's just kind of looking for the circle.
Well, you really to the can. You really like to the person. You really.
It is. I guess I always found it was a relationship between man and his animals, and there's respect between them.
Also, you see the relationship between the nature also in there. With the foreground and everything, you really see it.
I think that's probably one of the things that I'm more of a landscape painter now, and but I do other things. But it's just trying to find my continuity in what I do. And I paint in a series a lot of times. My painting, this one was from a winter festival series. I didn't put a lot in. I just put one in. Said, this thing. He said it scared you, this one, but kind of.
Such a dramatic palette change from the one before too. It's a monochrome, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But it was very cold when I did this series. It was, I think, 24 below, and initially I went out over a number of evenings. It's a whole series of evenings, and sketching in a small book with a carpenter pencil and big moose mitts on, like you just all covered up with and try to get a feeling for it. My camera froze up, so there's no camera pictures. This is all from sketchbook imagery that I work from, because you could hear the shutter go click, and that that picture didn't take, because it was just so cold. You'd have to keep your camera in your jacket. Yeah. So these are all from sketches from sketchbook series, and it was an exhibition that I had created for this series of stuff on the festival, and it doesn't exist anymore. It's just like this fantasy, and I thank God I did it when I did. And today at 24 below, I think maybe I'll just stay in my studio. I don't want to go out at night, but I actually went out, and Well, it was a weird feeling because we didn't have internet in those days. And when I went there, it seemed everybody was gravitating to that place at the same time. So it's like it was unbelievable. They sort of knew roughly when this event was happening, and they burned the Christmas trees, and it was a big fire, and kids sliding, skating, doing all this kind of stuff that went on, all volunteer. But everybody arrived at the same time, and it was like these huge crowds of people going across a field. And if anybody wants to see them, they're on my website, and they can feel this whole show. But just getting the feeling of that moment was when you need the body of work together to tell the story. And I think with you, I try to tell that story. It feels a little macabre at times, and it feels a little, you know, old world a little bit at times. And it was an old world. I mean, we went from, this is an analog festival, and we've now gone to little high-tech stuff now with, electrified lighting and all kinds of things. We were walking around with candles that are stuck in a glass, a little cup to give you light when you went across, which gives you a very 17th century feel to the moment, and it was kind of a different thing. And I'm sorry I didn't put as many of them in, but I got a few other images to go through here. But like I said, I like to paint in a series, and we have winter where I am quite over half the year. But ice fishing shacks were always I did a whole series like you, a series on things, and the reason for ice shacks. And it's kind of like a guy's last best deal. You can build one without a tax. You can build any size you want. You can do whatever you want and just drag it out on the ice and go ice fishing. And these become communities in the wintertime. So you're building your own community, and there's no cost to it. Like, you just go out there, and these people all get to know each other, and it's very social. And there's usually a card game and a bottle somewhere in each one of those, but it's just kind of and you might not catch any fish at all that day. It's just, you might have 2 or 3 guys in the place playing cards, it's just kind of it's sort of like your last building a fort when you're a kid. You just go find a tree, build a fort in the tree, and it's your fort for the summer, right? And that's what ice shacks are kind of about. And
that's still happening today. Is this still going on?
Oh, it still goes on. Yeah, every year. Yeah. And you're able, as long as you get them off the ice by the end of March before they melt. And otherwise they go down in the lake. They don't like that very much. So there's maybe some regulations now, a little bit. It's still pretty loose, though. Long you can drag your stuff out there in November, December when the ice is on, and they do that right across Canada. But anyway, I did a whole series on ice shacks and ice filleting fish, and some of those back to earth things, just the freedom part of what life is a little bit about. So, and then this is probably, maybe 15 years ago, this painting. And then, I think, yeah, I think we talked before, and you feel a little Group of 70 feeling to it, but
it's got that Group of 7-ish thing going there,
yeah.
Canadian, very Canadiana, obviously,
It wasn't really an intention to be anything other than myself. I mean, I appreciate all that Group of 7 have given us, a vision and of what Canada is. And it's really hard if you were to go into Northern Ontario or Quebec and not paint in the fall and not paint like Group of 7. You're just following the iconography of Canada.
And we're all influenced by someone. It's like the question is, you take those influences, they follow you, they follow me, they follow you, they probably follow pretty much every artist. It's not a question of trying to, duplicate anything, but it's a question of using that influence to sort of, it comes out in your work in certain ways, but you're not doing, it's not about copying or any, it's just about having an influence. I think every musician has an influence, and every writer has an influence, and every painter has an influence,
Yeah.
And
No, that's very true.
see in different works, like, oh yeah, I can I can see something in there from, you know, somewhere else, you know. And like you say, if you're paint Canadiana, especially up in northern Quebec or northern Ontario, you know,
Yeah.
there were
Our palace.
there were a bunch of guys out there a few years ago, you know, and they were they became pretty well known, you know. So yeah.
Well, the color palette's a little different on the prairies than northern Ontario, in that we don't have quite the reds, the deep colors. We don't get those. More of the oranges, yellows, and some of those things can happen. Some of the lower bushes can be quite cranberry in color, but you can manipulate as you want. But basically, moved to oil paint this last while. I painted acrylics. That previous show of the Winter Festival was all acrylic show. Just initially, it was easy to clean up water, and I had a deadline like crazy on that one for the show. But I've gone into oil painting more so, and loving it. So I've moved from watercolors through that. I've done printmaking and a bunch of other different things, just trying to feel out. Each one gives you a different way of looking at the subject matter. If you're cutting a wood block, you got to keep it simple. You can't, you really have to understand, when I make that cut, it's done. It's like a watercolor. You can't back up.
Yeah.
I do a fair bit of plein air painting. So this is probably where my environmental edge really starts kicking in this last 15, 20 years as part of my work commentary. And this one sold in an auction and did very well. It's just a little 8x10 oil on panel. But am I going to paint 27 more of these? No, I'm not. I've painted a couple of them, but maybe I'll revisit that again because they continue to clear cut and it's important. But it's what is of the moment that I feel I want to put my energy into. But it can feel kind of Group of 72 a little bit, because they did a fair bit of fire burn areas and different things.
See it's funny what people see, you know, but I see, especially the bottom part, I see like a Van Gogh kind of thing going on there, you know, the big brush, the bright colors, you know. I really see like, especially down at the bottom there, you know, the yellow. And he worked the brush like, there's something there, you know, that kind of, funny how you pick things out, but
they are relatively quickly done.
As to what people see in work, right? I mean, it's very, very subjective, you know.
Yeah. No, it's nice to have another artist looking at a work and say, because you see things differently than say general public might see this in a glance to look and say, oh, it's got the right colors, I'll buy it, you know, or not. But an artist looks at it, tears it apart, puts it back together, looks at it, you know.
I just see the brush strokes, you know. I see the brush strokes, you know, in the fields, in the foreground there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So then, this one's a lot. This is a little bit. I think this is an acrylic painting as well. This moved into a whole series of paintings I did with a combination of paintings and sculpture. I started moving into sculpture at this point. This is about 2007. It's really about there were so many animals being killed on the highway, and I just thought, what happens with all those bones? Like, we're losing the integrity of the land. In other words, you're taking so many animals from their environment, and they've been killed on a highway. He said, well, the other animals come and take it apart and move it about, and it actually eventually makes its way back to the environment again. It's all essential. Everything is hooked together. Everything belongs together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. When you take one piece out, is it filled with another piece, or does there a hole always left there? And sometimes there's a hole left in my heart when I kind of look at what we do as humans. And I think, is there things that we could do better every day, and the respect between not only ourselves, but the respect with the animals that we live with and around our environment. And so this was, you know, I don't want to get into, you know, the broken soils and the broken bones and the vessel area that's hollowed out with the regrowth that's trying to build on top of it, and there's a hollowness to the environment when you take something from it. You need to give it back in some form. So it's a complicated painting. It's a little surreal, and it's a little
very. It's
but
it's
so this is
an abstract.
this is,
I see it.
yeah.
You know.
It is. It can be very abstract. But I do love rhythms and symmetry, and things that represent other things. I mean, this could be a covering for a habitat of some kind. You could live within that space, and we build structures like that. We build a framework, we put a shell around it, we call it a house, we call it a home. But in nature, the bones become the structure, the roof, the things for everything from temporary structures. They can be built, and they're already there. I mean, I think we got ideas, and early man got ideas by how animals were built. And anyway, so we just mentioned we have this. I work in a series. Again, you can see the series in the background, but I've been working with a lot of the vehicle plastics that created a lot of this damage, and I now create characters from rubber tires and from bumpers and fenders that resemble the crows and ravens that have to they become the funeral directors for the event that happens. It can be a little macabre, but I just love the feeling of people being able to go between a three-dimensional structure. I would say in the foreground there a carcass or a thing made out of bumpers, to actually seeing visuals on a wall. So there's a interaction between three-dimensional and two-dimensional, and the aerials that you can put above them, so they get immersed in this I guess installation.
Mm-hmm.
They can go and touch. I love them. They go and touch the work and look up close at things, and see their reflection in some of the running board pipes that are there if they want to, but it's whatever they want to get out of them. The scale, people say, how big are they? The raven on the floor at the very back
is really like quite. It's really quite striking.
Well, he's about 7 feet long, so from tail to nose. So that's the scale of how big that one is. And there's 6 foot wingspan on the coniferous, the birds on the top there, the corvids that I call them, whether they be raven or crow, it's just whatever you want them to be, but they become just objects that this show will be represented in Saskatoon here in November at our main library downtown. It's going to be put back up. So that's what I kind of do. My work has transitioned from I've never really been a commercial gallery person. I've had a number of galleries, and everyone's gone broke. So I don't know if that was me or they closed their doors. That's my fault. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, but I think we're sort of in the same boat with that one. I've never. I'd not to count on galleries to make my living, I wouldn't have made much of a living.
Well,
what they have to do, and for some artists it works quite well, and for other artists it doesn't. I mean,
yeah. So I tend to be, I guess, sensitized to environmental things and what's happening. This was a response to a gallery call for an oil spill we had in one of our rivers in Saskatchewan, and I thought it needed to be really talked about more like a three-dimensional political cartoon. So I built these gas pumps that have this conversation, and I just felt a lot of times these oil industries, they felt a little self-serving more so than responsible to the environment or the people or to all the things. So it took them a day and a half or 2 days to find the leak, and there's like 250,000 liters of oil and bitumen that were spilled into the river. They said they cleaned up some stuff, but you can't always just clean everything up. You can't put a Band-Aid on things. So you need to take care of things from the beginning stages and put all those safety factors in. But anyway, this was kind of the kids love getting their photos taken with them. They do all their little selfies.
I think it's great.
Yeah. It was a fun piece to do, but it took a year to build these guys and develop the characters. So I used it quite a bit on social media as well, because the show was just a short time really in the gallery, and I think it did get a good response, but and it gets shown from time to time when a moment that arrives where I can do it. But otherwise, I'm storing things just like most artists, and this is another one that's more of a smaller installation for. We have an annual show, and this was in 2016, the early stages of our tariff issues that we were dealing with in Canada with the States. So it was more of a Roy Lichtenstein style of
pop art, very pop art, very
yeah, and it's intended to be. I really wanted that impact, and it's shown a couple of different places. I was very fortunate to show it for a whole summer in an art materials store in Saskatoon, and they were very nice that they put it up in their store, and it were kind of cool. People just see things, but they were just milk jugs, and I kind of made them look like dairy cows, and spilt milk on the floor. It was kind of a gesso and a bit of paint on a piece of plastic, let it dry, and then you cut it out in the shape you want, put it on the floor. So simple things, keep it simple, and work. I was very fortunate to get 2 little shopping carts. They were kind of damaged, and the store didn't want them. Said, here, just take them. So they gave them to me. I didn't. It was great. I love found materials. I love working with found items. And there I am. Now working on a series of large florals. Did a symposium last summer, and I love those symposiums because you can work in a time slot of 10, 12 days to develop something, actually build something. Whether you got your welder out, or I bought a great big pipe bender. I can bend beautiful pipe now in any shape I want. It's really nice. And it's 10 feet high, almost 10 feet high. The top one is, but these, I put just the flowers together. I guess it's more of a poppy, that tall one, and 2 tulips, the yellow one and the red one.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful, really beautiful piece. That would be a beautiful installation in front of some kind of public building, or something.
It's actually intended, it will be this summer, I'm hoping, be placed in front of the veterans building in a small city north of Saskatoon called Martinsville. So these 3 flowers that you'll see on the right there are part of their flower garden that's in the front of their building. The top one will actually hold 3 inches of water, so it becomes like a big bird bath. So it now interacts with nature a little bit, and it's a nice response piece. I think it fit well. All luck by chance. It's like never planned from the beginning to be a bird bath. It was just like after assembling it, I thought, gee, if I put the proper caulking in this place, it would hold water, and sure enough it did. And when you work on the other ones, so the other 2 flowers, they have a liner put in them so that all the refuse doesn't go, people don't start using them like a garbage collector, put their chocolate bar wrapper in them. But
they're pretty hot. You'd have to toss it up there,
Yeah, kids get creative. But anyway, they would be able to hold a bird's nest in each one of them if they wanted to, but I don't know if it will happen. But I think they would look really cool with snow on them, like a new snowfall. They'd be like big snow cones. But so basically, that's what I do. So I've transitioned from painting simple little watercolors. Now I'm doing sculpture, but I'm trying to make them at times work together. But I tend to work more like installations now, more so than trying to build a solo show and a bunch of things. I just found it more rewarding to work with recycled materials. So that's my journey. That's how I've been kind of going. I guess
going from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional is a real major shift. I mean,
it's a dramatic shift, but it's like, do you do that, or should you do that? And I'm saying, why shouldn't you? I mean, if you're not really potentially those large flowers are for sale. Actually, you probably sold more sculpture this last while than I've sold paintings. So, if you look at it, people they love to see that color, I think, and the shapes, and maybe how they interact with them, a little differently. Maybe their house is already full of paintings, but they could use a sculpture outside in their garden.
Those flowers and those flower sculptures would be really quite beautiful in front of people's.
They're kind of fun. They're kind of fun to do as well. Well, there he is. He's back.
Yeah, the Killjoy is here, guys. Sorry,
we ran a little long, but
that's fine. I have one of Paul's ravens, but I have the paper mache raven, so it sits over there in the corner. So we have that.
Yeah,
so
actually, it's a paper raven. I designed an actual bird, how you origami style, like how you kind of put one together, and it hangs from a
hangs over there. So, yeah, so it's very cool. So I have that. So when he talks about it, I'm like, yeah, I've got the small version. So anyway, the journeys have been, that was awesome. And Dwight, we've had you here before, so we love your artwork. So it's great. Paul, we love yours as well because we've done that before. So I'm sorry.
It's very kind to have me back.
Of course. So, and the Cuban stuff is great. I remember the baseball paintings, and they were wonderful as well. So, for anybody that wants to reach out to either Paul or Dwight and you didn't catch their websites, we'll put them at the bottom. If you can't figure that part out, reach to here on the show and we will put you in touch with them and you can buy some of their art. And as we always say, don't forget to like and subscribe. And Paul will be back next Thursday with another.
We're shortening up our season. We're getting near the end of a little bit of what we're doing. Give people a heads up. We got 3 more shows till the summer.
All right, you kick off for this.
We'll take a little bit of time off. We'll just give our people a heads up a little bit that we're going to take a bit of a breather and get back into it again. Good strong program again in the fall. But we'll get through. We'll probably have 1 or 2 throughout the summer, but nothing every day. But we'll let you know for sure.
There you go, guys. It's always good to see you both. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. Happy Thursday. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and we'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody.
Great to see you again.
Thank you. Great to see you. Cheers.